not proposing. Today's date is December 8th, 2024. We have an Israeli-Palestinian Confederation federal government simulation. We are proposing a democracy in Israel, Palestine, based on a federal government that will be mutual to the people of Israel and Palestine. By that, I mean the people that live in the area known as Gaza, the West Bank, and Israel, with over 14 million people who will live together in a democracy under the federal government for the entire area, with a separation of power between the legislative branch that will have 300 parliament members, with the executive branch that will have a president and vice president, and a judicial branch that will have judges, Palestinians and Israelis together. We are proposing that this federal government will be created independently and separately from the Israeli and the Palestinian government, that the federal government will be in competition with the Israeli and the Palestinian governments. We are not proposing dismantling the Israeli or the Palestinian government, because those governments are strong politically, militarily, economically, and they are supported by the people. The Israeli government is supported by the Israeli people. The Palestinian governments are supported by the Palestinian government. Not totally, but they are supported, and they are popular, even though they have huge internal dispute within themselves. But still, the idea of a Israeli government and the Palestinian government is generally supported by the Palestinian and the Israeli people, respectively. We have a constitution and a website. If you go to ipconfederation.org, you could read the constitution. You can go here to English, Hebrew, and Arabic, and you can read the constitution in the language that you prefer. The constitution prescribes exactly how the federal government will be created, what will be the structure of the federal government, and what will be the relationship between the federal government and the Israeli and Palestinian government, and how it will pass legislation. The Israeli-Palestinian Confederation, when it will be created, will be the only federal and legitimate government in Israel, Palestine, because it will be elected by the people of Israel and Palestine together. The Israeli government is not a legitimate government in the area of Israel, Palestine, because it is not elected by the Palestinian people. The Palestinian people are excluded from voting for the Israeli government, even though the Israeli government controls the entire area militarily. Palestinian people are excluded from voting. The Palestinian governments are also not legitimate governments, because they have not been elected at all by the Palestinians for over, I believe, 16 years. And they have never been elected by the Israeli people, although they have much less control than the Israeli government. My name is Joseph Avasar. You could reach me at josephavassar@gmail.com, and I am trying to respond to all the emails that I get. Unfortunately, our scheduled guest, Yanis Varoufakis, changed his mind on substance. He says that he refuses to participate in the simulation. He says that he generally supports the idea of a federal government, but he thinks that this is not the right time to create a federal government in Israel, Palestine.
Oh, Joseph, he's joining right now.
Oh, he is. Yanis, are you here? Yanis, are you here? Well, I just exchanged email and WhatsApp messages with his assistant, and she told me he's not showing up. Is someone telling me that Yanis is here?
I just saw him in the waiting room like he was joining, but now he's not.
Oh, okay. From what I understand, he changed his mind. He's not showing up. Um, he is against the idea of a federal government right now, although he says that in principle, he supports the idea. I had a personal meeting with him on Zoom, and to make a long story short, I was trying to convince him to show up. He agreed, and then he sent me an email saying that he changed his mind and we will not agree. So there was a back and forth changing of the mind. Bottom line, he thinks that it's not the right time to create a federal government. And I wish he was here, because I think that it's good to speak to people that are not fully supportive of the federal government, because to understand what is the reasoning behind their lack of current support or any support. Our next guest on December 22nd will be David Beto. He's a history professor at the University of Alabama. So that you know, we invite people that are interested in the subject, that have written about the subject, but we don't really know their position on a federal government. And that's, we usually explore their position, a week before when I meet with them. And the reason for the meeting is to give them time to think about our proposal and our formula for peace. So, for example, with David Beto, I haven't met with him yet in person. He, in principle, agreed to come, and I don't know his position on a federal government. The same with all the other guests that we are inviting, or most of the guests. On December 22nd, we have an ad in the Sunday New York Times inviting people to participate in the simulation. The purpose of the ad is to try to give our organization nationwide and worldwide acknowledgement. And this could not have been done without you guys. Many of you are participating in the simulations every time. We have a strong core of participants that are courageous enough and generous to come in and speak to us and speak with us and raise your questions and issues. And many of you are very, very generous in contributing to the IPC and contributing to the purpose of having an ad this time in the New York Times. And I thank you so much for that. I mean, it would not have been possible without you. I would like to tell you that this is not going to be the last ad. Our purpose is to create a campaign throughout next year, and to advertise not only in the New York Times, but in other major publications around in the United States. So we will try to put an ad in the Washington Post, in the Wall Street Journal, in the Chicago Tribune. It's a struggle every time to raise funding for it, but you've been very, very generous. We get very frequent donations, and many of you are extremely generous, and I thank you so much. Up to now, I think we are close to 80 or 90% of our goal for this ad on December 22nd. And hopefully we will have another ad in another paper or maybe in the New York Times, depending on the response we're getting, in February of next year. But we want to force the discussion. The New York Times and other papers are, I don't want to say refusing, but close to it. They are not really willing to discuss the idea of a federal government in Israel, Palestine. Although they are part of the federal system in America, they are distributing their papers. A lot of it is thanks to the federal government. In fact, the American federal government is aware of the federal system. The President of the United States of America is aware of a federal system because he is the president of a federal government. And for some reason, we are not discussing the idea of a federal government in Israel, Palestine. The only formula that they are familiar with. So we want to force that discussion. And we would like to have publications write about it. Once they write about it, then I think that things will change for us dramatically. And it's going to, and we want to do it this year. We want to have more ads throughout this year. We are getting tremendous support from you guys. And I thank you so much. And hopefully this year, by the end of this year, we will be able to make a huge change in the on the perspective of Israel Palestine. Once we get awareness of that possibility, then we will be able to raise the funding to actually create the elections and to recruit Palestinians and Israelis to run for parliament and president of the Israeli-Palestinian federal government. Our next guest on January 5th will be, so he's not our next guest, he's our guest on January 5th, Omar Shaban. He's a Palestinian analyst on political economy of the Middle East and a candidate in the first Palestinian parliamentary election in 1996. And then on January 19, we will have Walid Shumali. I believe he's here today. He's the co-founder and the director of the Palestinian Center for Research and Culture.
Yes, Joseph, I am here.
Oh, yes, hi. So,
Hi.
Yes, so I don't know what your views on the federal government, but and I know you're trying to understand our formula, and anytime you want to speak, we will let you do that, Walid. All right. We are demonstrating in this simulation how a federal government could be created and it could pass laws that will be acceptable to the government of Israel and Palestine. We call that threading the needle. We are not advocating for what the federal government will pass. We don't know what they will pass, but we are just demonstrating the possibility, the options that it will have to pass legislation that would benefit the entire area of Israel and Palestine, that neither the Israeli nor the Palestinian governments will be able to veto, and that we call that threading the needle. So we are asking you to be respectful. Let us demonstrate to you how a federal government could make peace, how it could pass legislation that would be acceptable to both sides. And we are encouraging you to ask questions. You can ask your questions throughout the simulations. Nasir will convey those questions. We ask you to put them on the chat. Nasir, are you here?
Yes, Joseph, I'm here.
Oh, terrific. Thank you. So even if you write comments in the chat, Nasir will translate those comments to questions. We want to be positive, and we want to be meaningful in this simulation. So Nasir will tell us the questions and will translate your comments to a question. Here is a short video that explains our vision for a federal government in Israel, Palestine.
The conflict between Israelis and Palestinians has endured for generations. And instead of time healing the wounds, it's only caused the anger to fester and the violence to grow. But what if there was a way to alleviate the tension? Something that may not outright solve every problem, but at least create a forum that encourages a peaceful compromise. Welcome to the Israeli-Palestinian Confederation, a common third government between the Israeli and Palestinian citizens, specifically designed to foster peace, tolerance, and economic prosperity between the two nations. Here's how it works. First off, both Israel and Palestine will keep their respective governments. Israel's Knesset and the Palestinian National Authority will remain unchanged. The Israeli-Palestinian Confederation, IPC, will be a third entity acting as a unifying agent between the two. The IPC will comprise 300 parliament members elected from 300 districts in Israel, the West Bank, and Gaza. Above them will preside a president and vice president, one Israeli and one Palestinian. In order for the IPC to pass a law, it will require a 55% majority from its Israeli representatives, as well as a 55% majority from its Palestinian representatives, thereby preventing either side from monopolizing the legislature. Of course, the IPC won't undermine the political power of either the Israeli or the Palestinian government. At any time, Israel or Palestine may veto a law passed by the IPC. If neither side vetoes, the law is passed. And the two nations are another step closer to resolution. Please help us make this a reality. The Israeli-Palestinian Confederation. We might speak different languages, but we all mean the same thing.
So we are actually simulating what's in that video. And before we conduct the simulation, we would like to take a pre-simulation survey, which we will compare to a post-simulation survey once the simulation is over. So at this time, I would like to ask you, the audience, to vote as a whole. Do you support a federal government for people of Israel and Palestine? Please vote. You have 10 more seconds to vote. Now, this is a unanimous, anonymous voting. So we don't know how each one of you voted. We know how you voted as a collective group. So, and you don't know how others have voted. So let's publish the vote. Okay, 30 out of 31, 97% voted yes. 1 out of 31 voted no. And it's 3%. Hopefully, we will be able to convince that one person by the end of the simulation to change his views.
The conflict between Israelis and Palestinians has endured for...
I know that a lot of you are not able to vote. We were going to give Yanis an opportunity to make an opening statement, but since he's not here, we're going to skip that part. Some people asked us, are you a confederation or federation? We are both. We are creating the definition, and definitions change, and we are saying that the definition of a federal or confederation government, as far as we are concerned, is our constitution, ipconfederation.org. This is the heart of the simulation. I was able to get to this part with Yanis, and he had, this is where we had major disagreements about having the federal government right now versus after certain events have happened. So we are asking you to make these assumptions. The first assumption is that we were able to obtain major funding. When I say major funding, over $100 million, at least $100 million, to advertise the idea of a federal government to the people of Israel and Palestine, the 14 or 15 million people that reside there, to tell them that there is a way to create a federal government by them electing parliament members. The funding will also allow us to create a platform for an election, and the funding will also allow us to recruit parliament members in Israel, Palestine. Like I said, Israel, Palestine, as we defined it, is the area that includes Gaza, the West Bank, and the area of Israel. The second assumption is that 14 million people, the entire population, excluding children, was able to vote, that 5 million people have actually voted. So you'll have to assume that 5 million people have actually voted, and 3 million people have Palestinian voted, and 2 million Israelis have voted. So this is part of the assumption. This is how we are conducting the simulation, as if we were able to get the funding, as we were able to create a platform for election, and as if 5 million 5 million people voted, 3 million Palestinian voted, and 2 million Israelis voted. You will also have to assume that the president, that me, Joseph, was elected president by 1.5 million vote, so that you know I am not qualified under the Constitution to be president. I do not intend to run for president, and I am not able to be president, but it makes it easier for me in the simulation to pretend that I am the president. And 1.3 million people voted for the Palestinian, and we will rotate in 2 years. I will become vice president, she will become president in 2 years. You'll also have to assume that 300 parliament members were elected in 300 districts, and I will ask all of you to take part as parliament members in this simulation. Each one of you is representing 47,000 people. So this is the area of Israel, Palestine. This is the area that each of you is representing, a small area of 47,000 people. So I'm asking you at this time, I already have, is Jeff Warner, you are here? Jeff?
Yes, I am, Joseph.
Okay, so you are the Prime Minister of Israel in this simulation. And Saeed, are you here?
Saeed is here, but he said that he wasn't feeling good, so he asked if someone else can take the role.
Okay. Walid, are you willing to be the president of Palestine in this simulation?
Okay.
Okay.
Why
so,
not?
So you will have to assume the political personality of the president of Palestine, and you will have to assume the political personality of the Prime Minister of Israel. That means you are not expressing your own opinion, you are expressing the opinion of the president and the Prime Minister of Israel and the president of Palestine. I'm asking you now, the audience, will you be so kind as to choose what area in Israel, Palestine you represent? Are you Palestinian? Are you Israeli? And I'm asking you to remain intellectually honest throughout the simulation, representing your district. I may ask you in the simulation, if you vote no on or yes, or we have a discussion, I'll ask you, what area are you representing? Who are your constituents? So at this time, I'll ask you to make a decision. Are you a Palestinian parliament member or Israeli parliament member in this simulation? Make your decision. Okay, publish the vote. We have 12 Palestinian parliament members and 10 Israeli parliament members, and you will be asked to vote on the Constitution and on legislation. So I hope things will be clear very soon. Some of you parliament members representing a mixed district, meaning a district in which Israelis and Palestinians live together. So for example, you can be a parliament member from Jerusalem where Palestinians and Israelis live together. You could be a parliament members even in Ramallah where Palestinians live right next to Israelis throughout the West Bank.
Hey, Joseph, there's a question from Walid. And it's a question that I think a lot of people get confused on. So that's why maybe I think we can address it.
Sure.
So when he says, when you're talking about a federation, and then you're talking about there's two parliaments, which means that the Israeli has a parliament. I think he means when Israel has a parliament and the Palestinians have a parliament, it seems to which sustains a confederation. So he's saying, let us be clear about that. So Walid, are you trying to imply that the parliament of the confederation is
Yeah,
two
well,
parliaments?
I'm still not clear about it. That's why I wrote this
Okay.
question, you know, so
Okay, it's-
because we're getting ourselves confused between
Yeah.
confederation and federation. When we talk about two parliaments, that means it's a confederation, not a federation.
Yeah, but the parliament is one. The confederation has one parliament. It has Palestinian and Israeli members of it. It's not two parliaments.
You mean the confederation?
The confederation, yes. So the entity here that which Joseph is he's presenting has only one parliament. So 300 members that are
Yeah.
Palestinian. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but he mentioned an Israeli parliament and Palestinian parliament. He didn't mention that the parliament, one parliament for Israel Palestine Confederation.
Yes.
Walid, I only mentioned an Israeli Palestinian federal parliament.
Okay.
I did not mention Israeli parliament or Palestinian parliament.
Okay. Now I'm clear about it.
300 parliament members in the federal government. Some are Israelis, some are Palestinians. They are all part of the federal government of Israel, Palestine. That would be they are all in the same government, in the federal government. The Israelis will continue to have their government. The Palestinians will continue to have their government, but the federal government will be independent and separate of the Israeli and the Palestinian government.
I see. Okay.
And you are acting in this simulation as the president of Palestine. So you are not part of the parliament in this simulation.
Okay, because also that was my next question, because in the Israeli legislation that those in the government are part of the Israeli Knesset. That's why I was getting myself confused about it also. So
okay, we are a separate and independent government with 300 parliament members, with a president and vice president. You are now, in this assumption, you are the president of Palestine. It's a separate government. Jeff is the prime minister of Israel. It's a separate government. So think of us as the independent, separate government that was elected by the people of Israel and Palestine, all the people in this map. 5 million people in this map elected us. We are not calling for the dismantlement of your government, the Palestinian government, or the Israeli government. We are a separate and independent government for the whole area. And we claim that we are the only legitimate government in this area because we are the only government that was elected by the entire population. We are also saying that your government, the Palestinian government, of which you are now the president, is not a legitimate government. We are also saying that the Israeli government is not a legitimate government in Israel, Palestine, because it's not elected by the entire population. But we are not calling for the dismantlement of the Israeli or the Palestinian governments. We are actually giving you a veto power over our legislation. Are we clear?
Yeah, okay.
All right, you'll see how it works. Okay. All right. So now we are, the first order of business is to ratify the Constitution. Is Charles here? Nasir, can you read
Yes,
the
yes, I'm here.
Oh, hi, Charles. Can you read the Constitution, please?
Yes. We believe that the Palestinians and Israelis are entitled to equal rights under the law and guaranteed human rights and freedom. The Israeli-Palestinian Confederation does not intend to supersede or supplant the Palestinian or Israeli governments, nor to abrogate or undermine any agreements between those governments. We recognize the need to work with the Israeli and Palestinian governments. Our purpose is to resolve conflicts and to expand the relationship between Palestinians and Israelis in a fair and equitable manner. We believe in equal rights under the law, guaranteed human rights and freedom for all. We voluntarily give the legislatures and the governments of Israel and Palestine veto power over legislation we pass relating to the domain of control of those governments. We believe in the separation of power between the legislative, executive, and judicial branches. We believe in the creation of a permanent secular government for all the people residing in Israel and Palestine. We believe in having a separate judicial branch relating to IPC legislation with Israeli and Palestinian judges with a system to avoid biased decisions based on nationality.
All right, so we are the government of the entire area. We are not intending to supersede or undermine the Israeli or the Palestinian government, or to, in fact, we give them a veto power if we pass legislation that violates their sovereignty. So the Israeli and the Palestinian government could still agree to whatever they want, including a two-state solution or one-state solution. We are not precluding that possibility. In fact, we are not precluding the possibility that the federal government itself will come up with one state or two-state, but it all has to be within the confines of the Constitution. Does anyone have any questions regarding this Constitution? Waleed, do you have any questions regarding?
Yes. How about the area of each state? I mean, is it like pre-June 4th, 1967? I mean, we will talk about the territories, of the 5th of July or 4th of July, June 1967, like Israel with its borders as are, and the Palestinians having their area of sovereignty in the West Bank and Gaza Strip, or there is kind of consideration, that we may consider a kind of territorial exchange? Is there is this in mind?
Okay, we are the government of the entire area, okay? We are the government of this entire area. The entire area that includes Gaza, the West Bank, Israel. We are the only legitimate government in that entire area. We are going to look at this entire area the way we want, not the way the Palestinian government wants or the Israeli government wants. Our purpose is to make a peace with all the area. We are the only legitimate government in Israel, Palestine. Now, in this simulation, or in reality, the Israeli and the Palestinian governments may want to talk about 1967 border, may want to talk about June 4th or June 5th or June 6th or whatever. We are the government. We're not going to preclude the Israeli and the Palestinian governments from doing so. But if they reach any agreement, that's fine with us. We are not going to undermine that agreement. But we don't think that those agreements will ever come about anyways. But regardless, if you do come up with an agreement, that's all up to you. But we want to resolve this conflict the way we want it, with 300 parliament members that are legitimately elected by the whole area. Any other questions regarding the Constitution? Okay, so the parliament members were elected. You all agreed to the Constitution before you ran for parliament, and now you have to ratify the Constitution. Can we have Palestinian parliament members in the parliament please ratify the Constitution? Palestinian parliament members only. Ratify the Constitution. This is Palestinian parliament members only. Okay. Publish the vote. 100% of the Palestinian parliament members ratify the Constitution. Let's go to the Israeli parliament members. Israeli parliament members, please vote. Israeli parliament members, please vote.
And just a reminder, when it's time to vote, please vote only when it's your turn to vote. The option to vote will come up for everybody. But just when if you're from an Israeli and it's a Palestinian time to vote, just X out, don't vote.
Yeah, we
vice
made it
versa.
clear, we changed it. Okay, publish the vote. Okay, one Israeli parliament members voted no on the Constitution. That Israeli parliament members will be expelled from the parliament. You cannot participate in the parliament unless you accept the Constitution. So the person who received the second number of votes in your jurisdiction, in your area, will become a parliament member as long as he or she accepts the Constitution. We are going to go on and into our first legislation. So we passed the Constitution. Congratulations. So this is a momentous occasion in the history of Israel-Palestine. It's the first time in the history of Israel-Palestine that the people of Israel and Palestine voted to create a federal government, a democracy for the entire area of Israel-Palestine. This occasion, the election and passing the legislation undermines the existing governments, meaning the government of Israel and Palestine, use of fear and hate to justify their action. It removes the collective stigma against Israelis and Palestinians that we are not able to make peace, that we are born to fight each other forever. That is a stigma that is now being removed because we were able to create a federal government and we were able to pass a legislation. It gives us, the parliament members and the people of Israel, Palestine, and me as the president, huge political capital that we intend to spend throughout the world. It will compel the governments of the world and organizations to contribute to our efforts to make peace. And it gives the Israelis and the Palestinians new self-image and proves that the Israeli and Palestinians are not a monolithic society. Not all Israelis and not all Palestinians think alike. Many Palestinians and many Israelis think very similarly, and we are not a monolithic society. So, congratulations. Our first order of business is granting a veto power to the separate governments. Nasir, could you please read this legislation? This is legislation.
Sure, granting a veto power to the separate governments. The Confederation is a government of the entire population of Israel and Palestine from the river to the sea. We recognize the Palestinian and Israeli governments are seeking their cooperation to implement our vision of peace by giving them a veto. We will do our utmost to satisfy the essential needs of each government. We are pleading with the Palestinian and Israeli public to understand that while we would like to pass the best legislation possible to improve their lives under these constraints, a perfect legislation is not possible. We hereby bestow a veto power relating to legislation affecting sovereignty to the following: the government of Israel on issues which it is indispensable, the Palestinian government on issues in which it's indispensable. In the event of changes in the entirety of the Israeli or Palestinian governments, this legislation may be amended or repealed subject to the IPC Constitution. The Parliament will decide on the indispensability. Vetoes may be bestowed individually or collectively.
So what is the difference between dispensable and indispensable? For example, if we pass legislation regarding the use of land or regarding police force or removal of the wall, or for that matter, the return of refugees, etc., the government are indispensable. They will be getting a veto power. But if we pass legislation relating to our own budget or ratifying the Constitution or appointing IPC ministers, or for example, seeking UN recognition, the government of Israel and Palestine are dispensable and they would not get a veto power. The reason we give them a veto power is because it provides a safety net to both sides. The Palestinians still want to have a Palestinian government. The Israelis still want to have Israeli government. So they get a veto over our legislation if it violates their sovereignty. The veto power increases the likelihood of Israelis and Palestinians who will participate as parliament members and participate in the election. It will decrease the Israeli and the Palestinian government's opposition to our federal government, because in fact, the federal government gives them more options than they had before and does not undermine their existence. It will remove any claims that the IPC is a subversive intention or is a subversive organization, and it gives legal protection to the candidates who will run because they will not be violating Israeli or Palestinian laws. It will compel the IPC to thread the needle, meaning to pass legislation that will be acceptable and not objectionable to the Israeli or the Palestinian government, and it will create a platform for negotiation between the Palestinian and the Israeli governments with a deadline. Does anyone have any questions regarding this veto power before we take a vote? Waleed, do you have any questions?
Excuse me. I think it's a kind of a double-edged sword, this veto. Well, theoretically, it sounds reasonable, but maybe on the ground, I don't know. I'm not sure it works that way because, veto can be used or applied in several occasions or on several legislations that will impede or hamper any kind of resolution. I don't know, but I'm just.
You're basically saying the veto could be used in bad faith.
Yes.
And we are
Absolutely.
saying that it will not be used, we are minimizing the possibility that it will be used in bad faith because we are given legitimacy by the people of Israel and Palestine. I am the president. We have 300 parliament members that are elected by the people of Israel and Palestine. And that's what we call threading the needle. We will be able to pass legislation that neither the Israeli nor the Palestinian government will be able to veto, even if they want to, because we will be able to undermine their legitimacy and point to the people of Israel and Palestine and the whole world that their governments are acting against their interest. Does anyone else have any questions regarding the veto power? Okay, hearing no questions, let's take a vote. Palestinian parliament members, please vote on the granting the Palestinian parliament members only. Please vote. Palestinian parliament members. Please vote on granting the veto power. We need 55% of the Palestinian parliament members to agree on this legislation. Please publish the vote. 100% of the Palestinian parliament members agreed to this legislation. Let's go to the Israeli parliament members. Are you willing to give a veto power to the Israeli and the Palestinian governments? Israeli parliament members only, please vote. We need 55% of you to vote and to agree to this legislation. If we have 55% of the Palestinian parliament members and 55% of the Israeli parliament members, then this legislation will pass. We need more vote. We have more Israeli parliament members. Please vote. Israeli parliament members. You can't just hide and not vote. You need to vote. Israeli parliament members. We have 10 Israeli parliament members. Please vote.
There is no pop-up to vote.
I'm sorry?
I don't see any pop-up to vote on.
Oh, you don't see it? Dan, can you try that again? Give the Israeli parliament members option to vote?
I'm seeing it.
I was seeing it.
I see, okay.
You want to try it again? Let's try it again. Because it looks like only 6 people voted. So I think that it's let's just cancel that one and redo it.
It's up.
Okay. Israeli parliament members, please vote.
All right, go ahead.
Okay.
Okay.
By the way, Joseph, how many Palestinians and Israelis are we here?
We don't know. I don't really know. We don't separate by Israelis or Palestinians. It doesn't. We are only doing it in the simulation. All right. Let's end the polling. 6 out of 6, 100% of the Israeli voted yes. So even if we take into consideration that there were 10 and 4 are not showing up for the vote, it's still, we have 55% passage on the Israeli side. So the veto power has been granted, has passed. All right, let's go to our first substantive legislation, rebuilding Gaza and southern Israel. Charles, could you please read this legislation?
Rebuilding Gaza and southern Israel. The IPC is the only legitimate government in Israel and Palestine together, consisting of 300 parliament members elected by the entire population. Approximately 125 members represent the destroyed areas. The IPC is committed to the well-being of all people, including the 5 million individuals directly affected by the violence since October 7. The IPC believes that the future of Gaza and Israeli people is interconnected. It is unlikely that the Israeli and Palestinian governments will be able to restore a normal, peaceful existence in the foreseeable future. The IPC is thus requesting a $50 billion grant from the international community, which includes Israel and Palestine, to fund and coordinate the rebuilding of the devastated areas. The IPC will prioritize the following. 1. The IPC is calling for an immediate ceasefire and the immediate return of all political prisoners in Israel and Palestine to their homes. 2. Rebuilding thousands of homes, roads, hospitals, civic buildings, and infrastructure to facilitate the immediate return of all people to their homes. 3. Restoring law and order and civil society that have been destroyed. The government of Israel and Palestine are given a veto power.
Okay, so after this legislation is passed, if it is passed, we will go to the Prime Minister of Israel and the President of Palestine and ask them if they're going to veto this legislation. But before we do that, does anyone have any questions regarding this legislation?
I have a question about the 125 members. Why this number?
It says approximately 125. So that means the the area of Gaza has between about 45 or 50 parliament members, and southern Israel has another 75 members. So that's approximately, we are approximating that the area of southern Israel and Gaza that was affected has 125 members.
Okay. Okay.
Any other questions?
Yes, yes, I do have a question. The last question, or I'm sorry, the last sentence of the first paragraph. It is unlikely that the Israeli and Palestinian governments will be able to restore a normal, peaceful existence in the foreseeable future. That sounds so negative as compared to
But what is the question?
why is that sentence so negative?
Because we believe that it reflects reality. The reality is negative.
But you also talk about the foreseeable future.
Correct.
I'm 79. Okay, so if I live another 20 years, will there be peace?
The Israeli-Palestinian conflict has been going on for over 150 years.
Yes.
The Israeli and the Palestinian governments have not been able to make peace. So it's not only the 20-some years in the future. We are saying, based on their track record, their horrible track record, we do not see them able to make peace, and we are just reflecting the reality based on the track record that they themselves have created, which necessitated the creation of our federal government. Any other questions?
Right.
Okay, hearing no other questions, let's go to the Palestinian parliament members only. Palestinian parliament members, do you please vote? Palestinian parliament members, vote either yes or no on this legislation. Palestinian parliament members, please vote. We need 55% of you. Publish the vote. 100% of the Palestinian parliament members voted in favor of this legislation. Let's go to the Israeli parliament members only. Please vote on this legislation. Israeli parliament members, please vote. Do you support this legislation? Israeli parliament members. We need 55% of you. Publish the vote. 7 out of 7 voted yes. It's 100% of the participant. It's also more than 55% of the total Palestinian Israeli parliament members. So this legislation has passed. Let me go to the president of Palestine. Mr. President, are you going to veto this legislation? I believe you are the president of Palestine.
Yes. What's your question again?
My question is to you is, you have the power to veto this legislation. We passed this legislation, almost 100% of the Israeli and the Palestinian parliament members agreed to pass this legislation. Now we are going to you and asking you, are you going to veto this legislation? Because you have the power to veto this legislation.
No.
Okay, let's go to the Prime Minister of Israel. Mr. Prime Minister, are you going to veto this legislation?
With regret, the government of Israel has to veto this legislation from both propositions. Number one, it calls for a ceasefire, and it's the clear position of the Israeli government and supported by the Israeli people that we must finish the job. We cannot have a ceasefire without completing the job. Second, in the rebuilding, Israel will gladly and with thankfully accept any funding of the $50 billion to rebuild within the state of Israel. However, the actual physical rebuilding must be conducted under Israeli law controlled by local municipalities. There needs to be a partnership. The legislation has to be changed. There has to be a partnership between the IPC and the government of Israel to decide what are the priorities of building, where the building should be, what the building should look like, so that what we come out with is better than what we went in with a few years ago. So with regret, the way the legislation stands, the state of Israel has to veto.
Well, the only substantive reason from what you just said is that you are opposed to the ceasefire.
That's correct. But the way the Proposition 2 is stated, it has to be stated in a way that makes it clear that it's a partnership and it's not the IPC coming into the state of Israel and willy-nilly building what they want rather than what fits the Israeli law.
Well, there is no, I mean, our constitution requires cooperation with the Israeli and the Palestinian government. Regarding the ceasefire, when are you planning to have a ceasefire?
When we finish the job.
And when is that going to be?
When it is.
All right. So, so you are willing to have us not be able to get $50 billion to help the Gaza, to help Israel, and to continue the war until an unknown time, and expose your own people, the Israeli people, to continue fighting without any formula for you to tell us when are you going to stop and what your rebuilding formula is.
That is the position of the state of Israel, yes.
All right. So
as illustrated just recently, where we did a ceasefire that's sort of not really holding with Lebanon, but refused to do it with Gaza. And that is the position of the Israeli government, and it doesn't seem to be very opposed by the people of Israel.
Okay, so if we are able to work a compromise where you will agree to a ceasefire in the next 2 weeks, would that change your position?
If you can do that.
If we can pass legislation that says the IPC is calling for ceasefire in 2 weeks and return of all prisoners, number one, would you then agree to that?
No, we have the Israeli government insists that we finish the job of destroying Hamas.
Okay, and we don't know when you're going to be doing that. You don't know that either.
Correct.
All right. Okay, so we are going to suspend this legislation, and I am going to be working hard in order to advertise your position within the Israeli population and the international population in order to make sure that you will not be the Prime Minister of Israel in the very near future, so that we can bring this legislation again and help the people of Israel and Palestine make peace as soon as possible, because you don't really have any plan. You're just being vague, and you are undermining the people of Israel and Palestine with your vague position on this question.
May I speak as a left-wing member of the Israeli parliament?
And I want to respond to that.
There is no, are you part of the parliament?
Yeah, I selected for the Israeli side of the IPC.
Okay, so yes, you can, as a parliament member, you can speak. Yes.
Yeah, I just would for the sake of simulated realism, I would, as a pro-peace member, of the Israeli parliament and the IPC, I wish to register my disagreement with the actions of the prime minister, and call for a vote of no confidence, forthwith.
Well, you can't do that. You are part of the Israeli Palestinian Confederation Parliament. We cannot vote for no confidence. We can call upon the Israeli Parliament to do that, but we are a separate government. And that's exactly what I propose as the president of the entire area of Israel-Palestine. I am going to be calling upon the people of Israel and the world and the parliament, the Knesset, to remove this prime minister, because he is an obstacle to peace, is an obstacle to the Israeli people.
Can I say something here?
Sure.
Getting out of character as the prime minister of Israel, this reminds me of the way President Carter got Prime Minister Begin to finally agree to the Camp David Accord. When Begin wouldn't do it, he threatened Begin with going to the UN and saying it's Begin who's holding peace back. And that's what you're proposing to do, and that, in fact, might work. But coming back into character now, you can get rid of me as the prime minister, but all of the rest of the political establishment in Israel seems to agree, and therefore any future replacement prime minister agrees that we must finish the job before there is any ceasefire.
Well, the question is going to be, is this job, are you able to finish the job? Is there a job to be finished here? Or is this a perpetual war? But we're not here to argue about this substance. We are just demonstrating how a federal government will work. Whether it will be successful or not on this particular issue is a very large subject. We're just demonstrating how the federal government will function. Let's go to the...
There's two hands raised. One of them is myself. If you don't mind, Joseph, this was actually a good example of the veto and how the veto works. I have to admit that when I first started to participate in these simulations, I really didn't understand the veto and why it was. I thought it was a big obstacle and it was unnecessary. However, I learned that it would be the only way to ever get the government of Israel to commit to participating in a confederation. And at the same time, and I think what Daniel said was very smart, that even though we give Israel and the Palestinian governments this veto, the idea, the big picture is that it might motivate people, like Daniel said, to put pressure externally on the Israeli prime minister, because here he is, you have a plan, you have money, you have backing. Exactly. And the prime minister is being stingy on his political aspirations, whether it's to stay in power, continue the war, build settlements, whatever it is. And this might be used as a tool. So both to lure the Israeli and the Palestinian governments into this cooperation, and at the same time, a tool to use. But of course, it needs that will from the people. Because right now we have an Israeli prime minister who's not listening to his population. The people in the streets in Tel Aviv that are, saying, please make an agreement so we can get the hostages released, and etc.
Right. You said there is another question or comment?
Shlomo Or has his hand up.
Yeah. Okay. So quickly. So now this is a simulation. So we are the Israeli representatives in this parliament. Maybe they can vote here too against the prime minister as a simulation. It doesn't necessarily reflect what really will happen in Israel.
There is no Israeli representative of this. There is the Israeli person who is part of the parliament right. of Israel-Palestine. So he doesn't have any special privileges as an Israeli parliament member. He is part of our parliament together. We're all together.
So the parliament cannot vote against the president.
We cannot vote to dismantle or remove the Israeli prime minister.
How about change his decision? No?
Yeah, we can put pressure on him, just like Jeff said that the President Carter put pressure on Menachem Begin to accept peace with Egypt by threatening to expose him, that if he would not make peace with Egypt, he will be exposed, and the idea will be brought to the UN, and Israel will be exposed as a country that does not want peace. And Menachem Begin accepted or succumbed to that threat. And that's exactly what we are doing. We are saying we are going to threaten the Israeli prime minister that if he does not accept a reasonable resolution for peace, and including, and by the way, the Palestinian president agreed to it. So we are just going to be able to put pressure on the Israeli prime minister to accept peace because the entire area is basically agreeing with it. All right, let's go to the next.
That's actually one of the strengths of the IPC, is to expose recalcitrant people on either side.
Correct.
Yeah, but there is a pressure from the outside, as you described very nicely, Joseph, and then Joseph, and then there is a pressure from the inside. So,
Correct.
so if
Correct.
right, so
Pressure from the outside and the inside. We are the people of Israel and Palestine in this. Okay.
but you don't let us pressure him from the inside. You said it's only from the outside. So no?
No, you're reading me wrong. We are not able. We are not the government of Israel. The prime minister of Israel was elected by the people of Israel only. Okay. We are the government of the entire area. We are not the government of Israel. But we are the Israeli and Palestinian people. We have huge political power, much greater than the Israeli or the Palestinian government. But we do not have the power to force the Israeli prime minister to accept a decision. The only way we can do that is by delegitimizing him, or by showing that he is unreasonable, putting pressure on him.
Okay.
All right, let's go to the next legislation. And that is temporary IPC exclusive jurisdiction over the Gaza Strip. Nasir, could you please read this legislation?
Yeah, temporary IPC exclusive jurisdiction over the Gaza Strip. The IPC is the sole legitimately elected government in the Gaza Strip. The Israeli government controls Gaza, but was never chosen by its residents. The existing Palestinian government was not elected by the Palestinian people. The IPC will continue to serve as the federal government for the entire region of Israel and Palestine, retaining exclusive authority over the Gaza Strip until a Palestinian government is elected. All legislative, executive, and judicial decisions concerning the Gaza Strip will be made by the entire IPC government in line with the IPC Constitution. The government of Israel and Palestine are given a veto power.
Right. So basically we are saying, since there is no legitimate government in Gaza at all, we are proposing that the IPC will be the exclusive government in Gaza, meaning until there is a Palestinian government elected in Gaza, we will be the exclusive government of Gaza, but we will conduct ourselves as in accordance with the Constitution, meaning in accordance, we will give a veto power to the Israeli and the Palestinian governments. Does anyone have any questions regarding this legislation?
I think that there's a lot of problematic issues here, including like infrastructure security, policing. Does the IPC have the capacity to control, to rule over, not to rule over Gaza, but to be able to take on this task? I'm not sure if if this can be done without the institutions and security forces.
So what are you saying? Who will be the security forces if not the IPC?
The Palestinian Authority could be the only one. The Palestinian Authority has the security forces, they have the institutions, they have everything already. But I mean, to my knowledge, does the IPC have any kind of security forces? Does it have institutions to run the Ministry of Health, Education, and things like that? I don't know if they have the capability to take on this task.
Well, we could work in cooperation with the existing peaceful institutions in Israel, Palestine, in Gaza, I'm sorry.
Excuse me, Joseph. I think I would like to second Nasir in this concern, his concern, and I would rather have, you know, the Palestinian Authority.
Okay, Walid, let it go to a vote, and then you, as Palestinian president, you can decide whether or not you want to veto it. But maybe we should let it run.
The Palestinian Authority is not elected in Gaza. It's not a legitimate government in Gaza. Israel is not a legitimate government.
Well, we can. Yeah, but
we are the only people that were elected by the people of Gaza. So you're saying let's forego the only government that was elected in Gaza and change that with a government that has not been elected in Gaza. Is that what you're saying, basically?
Well, in a way, yes, but it sounds, even though it sounds more, I mean, reasonable and feasible than having, you know, the IPC there.
Well, it's reasonable to you, but it's not objectively reasonable. You cannot say, well, I want to be the government of Gaza, even though I was not elected by the people of Gaza, and then have a government that was elected in government not have exclusive jurisdiction over. We are saying, fine, whenever the Palestinians choose a government of Gaza, we will give them the jurisdiction over Gaza.
Okay.
All right, let's have a vote.
We have another hand. We have another hand raised, Mona, before we go. But I think we should let it run its course and then have the presidents and prime ministers veto it so that we can go run the course through the system. Go ahead, Mona.
No, I just wanted to respond to the statement that the Palestinian Authority is not the government of Gaza. The Palestinian Authority is the government of Palestine, which is the government, for better or for worse. The government is the Palestinian Authority of the West Bank, Gaza, West Bank, including East Jerusalem. What Hamas won was not winning control of Gaza. They won a legislative election. But when they fell out with the Palestinian Authority, they took de facto control of Gaza. They were never the sovereign in Gaza. They had de facto control of Gaza. So the Palestinian Authority, whether it's able to or not, is another question. But the Palestinian Authority is the sovereign in both the West Bank and Gaza, even though they have no effective control in Gaza.
Nasir, can you take over the the discussion for a second?
Sure. I want to move forward on a vote. So let the can we have a poll come out for the Palestinians? So only Palestinian parliament members, can you vote yes or no on this legislation? Give it a few seconds. Okay, so we have 5 yeses and 1 no. Okay, so that passed. Can we now have the Israeli members vote? I can't see Palestinians voting for this, but anyways, that's me. Okay, it's also passed. We have 5 in favor, 1 against, 83%. So the measure has passed. So now it will need to be approved by Israeli and Israeli Prime Minister and the Palestinian President. So we'll first go to the Israeli Prime Minister. Will you veto this legislation?
The Israeli government is open to this, to the IPC being the sovereign or temporary sovereign in the Gaza Strip. And it does, to my understanding, the IPC does have a police force, and it can probably work with existing institutions. And we think this might be a reasonable proposal. And so I will.
Okay, so you will not veto it? Okay.
We will not veto this.
Okay, thank you. So to the Palestinian president,
Actually, I veto it.
okay. So the Palestinian president's a veto, so the legislation doesn't pass. Would you like to give an explanation as to why you vetoed it real quick, please?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, that I don't feel like it's feasible to have the IPC in Gaza replacing either Hamas or the Palestinian Authority. Although well, the thing is, it's more reasonable that the Palestinian Authority take over, or to have like elections in Gaza Strip. I mean, if you will.
So let me ask you a question. If we were to put something like for a period of 1 year, just so that the Palestinian Authority or the ruling
that would make it more reasonable for me.
Okay. So Joseph, I don't know if you were here. The Israeli Prime Minister did not.
I will pass it. I'll pass it then.
So Joseph, the Israeli Prime Minister did not veto this. The Palestinian Prime Minister did veto it, and I asked him if we were to put a timeline, for example, 1 year, to give the Palestinian Authority. So if we made it clear that the timeline is 1 year and that the Palestinian Authority would be responsible for setting up the new election and a governing body over Gaza, he said that he would agree to it. Is that right, Walid?
Yes.
Okay. Can we change that?
To 1 year.
Yeah,
Yes.
1 year, and then also specifically saying that the Palestinian Authority would be responsible for forming the ruling, like basically incorporating it into the West Bank, the ruling authorities and bodies of and control over Gaza. Mona, did you have a question? Because you have your hand raised. Oh, she lowered her hand.
That was an old hand, sorry.
Yeah, no. And again, this is another example of how the veto. So here we had a veto, and we were able to go back and say, let's change the legislation so that it's acceptable by both sides. So in this situation, the legislation changes, we'd vote on it again, and then it'd go back for the veto. And I don't think the only thing is the Prime Minister may veto this because he might say, I don't want the Palestinian Authority to control, but that's a different situation.
Would you mind if I make an observation as a political scientist?
Sure.
Just that right now, it's kind of like there's a kind of an assumption that the present political stances and motives and so on are what is in existence at the time of the implementation of the IPC. But I think it's reasonable to assume that by the time the IPC were instituted, that there would be a lot of important shifts in public opinion and in the Constitution, or the nature, who are members of what parliaments and what kind of prime ministers are getting elected and so on. And as a consequence, positions may not be as firm then on the same issues that they're really firm on now. They may be softened, they may be different, and so on. For instance, bringing the PA in, if the Hamas and PA, in the next months, I mean, they've already kind of informally agreed to some power sharing. If they were to formalize that, then the bringing the PA in from the Hamas standpoint or anybody else's standpoint in Palestine might be a non-issue. It may be perfectly fine. So it's just to say that the politics may be fundamentally different at the time that this all happens.
So I added the Palestinian people will work. Oh, okay. So it says
It didn't
in the Gaza Strip for a period of 1 year.
Okay.
The Palestinian people will work during that time to have an election for a Palestinian government.
Okay. So do we have to re-vote on this before we submit it for
Yes, let's have the
Okay.
Palestinian people,
Okay.
parliament members in the IPC vote on this. Palestinian parliament members. We need
Okay.
55% of the Palestinian parliament members voting, so please publish the vote.
So yeah, it's interesting because this one, we actually had some opposition in the previous election. So it looks like 100% in favor of this legislation.
Let's have the Israeli parliament members. Israeli parliament members, please vote. Publish the vote. 86% of the Israeli parliament members voted yes. Prime Minister of Israel, are you going to veto this legislation?
I will not.
And let's have the President of Palestine. Are you going to veto this legislation?
No, I will not.
Okay, but you'll have to work throughout the Palestinian community to create an election in the next year.
Absolutely.
All right. Okay, let's go to our last legislation, joint economic zone. Charles, can you please read this legislation?
Joint Economic Zone. The Joint Economic Zone, JEZ, between Israel and Gaza. Exclusive IPC management and control and cooperation with the existing governments. Common economy. Education, industry, banking, agriculture. Sewer treatment, desalination plants, solar farms, wind power, and green energy. An international airport and seaport, equally accessible to Israeli and Palestinians. We hereby submit this legislation to the Israeli government, the Palestinian governments. We bestow upon them a veto power which may be exercised in the next 60 days.
Does anyone have any questions regarding this proposal by the Israeli-Palestinian Federation to create a joint economic zone between Israel and Palestine and Gaza? Walid, do you have any questions?
No, no.
All right. Let's have the Palestinian parliament members please vote on this legislation. Okay, we need 55% of the Palestinian parliament members. Publish the vote. We have more than 55. We have 100% of those who voted. Let's have the Israeli parliament members, please vote. Israeli parliament members only, please vote on this legislation. Publish the vote. We'll have 86% of the Israeli parliament members. This legislation passed the parliament. Let's go to the president of Palestine. Walid, are you going to veto this legislation?
No, no, absolutely not.
Okay, let's go to the prime minister of Israel. Are you going to veto this legislation?
No.
All right. So I think we demonstrated very well with this legislation how a federal government could thread the needle and pass legislation that would be acceptable to both sides, the Palestinians and the Israelis, for the purpose of giving advantage, peace to the people of Israel and Palestine together. Let's go to a post-simulation survey. After participating in the simulation, do you support a federal government for Israel, Palestine? Please publish the vote. Okay, 100% of those who voted, yes. I'm just interested, there was when we took the first survey, there was one person who voted no. is that person still with us here? And if so, did he change his mind, or is he not voting, or what? The person who voted no in the previous, are you here? All right, don't hear from him. All right, so before we go to open discussion, closing remarks, a common democratic confederation, federal government can bring peace, will bring peace. Online election, we're speaking about online elections are feasible and can be held securely. The country of Estonia is holding elections and 40% of the population vote online. 1 week of war between Israel and Gaza cost $3 billion. We could make this federal government with about $100 million. It's not a lot of money in comparison to the money that is being spent day in and day out now on war. The current governments of Israel and Palestine are not legitimate. It makes total sense to create a legitimate government in Israel, Palestine, and to bring peace. This is what you can buy for $100 million. Or, in my opinion, we can make peace in Israel, Palestine. The New York Times ad will help us get awareness and will help get exposure to the IPC. So I'm going to open now to open discussion. I'm going to stop sharing. And Nasir, you want to conduct the open discussion?
Sure, we can do open discussion now with questions, comments. You just, if you want, we can just take turns. If you want to raise your hand, you can raise your hand and we can have your questions or your comments. The group is smaller than usual, I think, no? Oh, we got 34.
We have 34 people now.
Yeah. So I think that the legislation that we had was oh, okay, I'll go ahead. Go ahead, Daniel.
I was just about to lower it again, you know, just to give you a time to continue to talk, but I'll throw this out. This is Joseph knows what I've been working on in terms of like a peace and reconstruction plan. And I've been thinking, Joseph, you know, about reworking some important elements of it to kind of dovetail it on the back end with the IPC. You know, and I wonder what you think about that idea, because I think it's, you know, it's like there's a necessary political and physical gap between, you know, what is possible now and what the IPC seeks to achieve. And you know, and I've been, you know, on a scholarly and practical basis trying to kind of like fill that gap, you know, so as to make it possible to move in that direction. You know, to kind of provide governments the ability to say, okay, oh, here's a plan that we can actually get on board with, leads somewhere. You know, I'm just...
Well, I personally think that the Israeli and the Palestinian governments are obstacle to peace. They will not create a federal government. It would not make sense to them to create a government that would be in competition with them. So we think that, or I personally think that the federal government should be created independently and separately of the Israeli and the Palestinian governments. And despite of whether they want it or not, I do not see meaningful participation with the Israeli or the Palestinian government in the creation of the federal government, because I see them as the enemy of peace, and they see us as competition. So I don't really see any benefit of working with the Israeli or the Palestinian government to create the federal government.
Yeah, actually, you misread me a little bit, which is totally understandable. You know, because I'm not always clear. The idea is to create, or, you know, kind of the more principal goal is to create a gap filling plan that makes it almost incumbent, especially on the United States, but other Western governments, to say, oh, that's something we can go with, and therefore and thereby be able to put pressure, because they've got pressure behind them on the domestic side, and it meets their geopolitical goals, to be able to put pressure on especially on the Israeli side, but also on Palestinians, to comport with a plan that meets their fundamental requirements. Now, it wouldn't meet the fundamental requirements of the extreme right in the settler movement in Israel. They would lose under any plan that brings peace about. But everybody else, would benefit from peace and security. So it's basically, it's a kind of a U.S.
I also
oriented.
see the American government as the enemy of peace.
That's right. That's right. And that's why, maybe Yusha and I could take this off.
Well,
because
when
I'd be
you
interested
speak
in
about gap, how to bridge the gap, I'd be interested in knowing, but I think that the only bridging of the gap is if we have an awareness that there is a possibility, and we are trying to bridge the gap by creating a better, more awareness of this peace plan. So I'd love to hear what you're saying about bridging the gap, but maybe we should have a private.
I was going to say that would also be are you based, Daniel? Are you based in the U.S.?
I'm in San Diego, California.
Okay, you're in San Diego. That would be actually a really good topic for a podcast regarding, the U.S., especially like the U.S., the U.S. involvement, and how they are an obstacle to peace. Is it the U.S. an obstacle to peace as much as the Israeli government under Netanyahu?
Right.
So it could be. I'm throwing that out for you guys.
Yeah, I'll put some stuff in your private chat.
Okay, great.
Sure. Shlomo.
Yeah, the answer to the question, yes, the American government is an obstacle to peace in the Middle East and everywhere else on this planet. I'm actually curious about what how he views this IPC idea, and when he talks about the gap. Talking about gap, I will just mention quickly that every day that passes and the genocide in Gaza continues and the ethnic cleansing in the West Bank continuing, there is the gap between what we are doing and what the reality becomes larger and larger. But I'm still here, and I'm glad some other people are here too, with the hope to eventually close this gap. If this is talking about gaps, I wonder what Daniel thinks, and I will take it from here.
Put me on the spot. Thank you very much. I will put a link to the proposal that I wrote, which goes on at great length, so that you can. But just to summarize, the way I worked on this was, from last, November, a year ago, basically, after I sort of kind of absorbed October 7th and the political and geopolitical impacts and so on. I saw the close, the close electoral balance between the two U.S. parties as being an opportunity to provide either party, but most likely the Democratic Party. Of course, I completely, was wrong on Harris's, ability or willingness to go against the AIPAC. But I saw it as an opportunity to kind of square the circle, to produce a plan that met fundamental Israeli and political concerns. You can't meet everything, but if you can meet all the most important stuff, basically peace and security and reconstruction and so on, then, and something that would essentially defang the ability of the AIPAC to rule over American politics.
What's wrong with our plan, Daniel?
Pardon me?
What's wrong with our plan?
Oh, there's nothing wrong with the IPC plan. It's a question of focus. I was focusing on the American electoral moment you know, and trying to provide American policymakers and politicians an opportunity to take a stand for peace, to actually twist the Israeli elbow you know, so that in a way that would force Israeli flexibility, you know, is up to and including, of course, arms suspensions and so on, but for the purpose politically of guaranteeing Israeli security, you know, by providing a solution that the American domestic politics could accept that would divide the Jewish vote, and that would bring back American Palestinian pro-Palestine voters, you know, in order to put Harris over in the swing states. Essentially, you know, I mean, there's a lot of things wrong with what happened, but I actually wrote a speech for Harris, and I got it to her via back channels, where she, you know, squared the circle politically, you know, held on to Jewish voters, but, you know, but spoke for the aspirations of the Israelis and so on for security, you know, and of course it didn't go anywhere. I mean, she is, I think, she has lived her career like so many American politicians, basically, you know, with AIPAC like a worm in her brain, right? You know, it's you know, there's a DNA issue here in American politics. You know, that American politicians, you know, many of them can't conceive of breaking with the AIPAC position, you know, because it's just ingrained in the nature of how they win races. You know, so
Daniel,
I was trying to provide them a way.
we're not trying to please the American political system, whether it is Republican or Democrat. This is not our goal. The American political system is a total failure when it comes to Israel-Palestine. So to focus on the American political system as a way to help us or to make peace is totally the wrong focus. We are focusing on the American people, those American reasonable people that will be supporting the IPC, not the government. The government is the most hypocritical government probably in the history of the Middle East, because the American government believes in a federal government, in a constitution, in separation between church and state in America, but believes the opposite when it comes to Israel-Palestine. So why should we waste any valuable time on trying to persuade the total failed hypocritical American government to support us when we know that they are not going to support us? They are hypocritical. They are themselves are believing a federal government for themselves. The president of the United States is the president of a federal government. It's not a strange idea for him to have a federal government in Israel-Palestine. Why would he not support a federal government in Israel-Palestine? Well, they have their own reason. But to waste our time on the American political system and to please them, to me, it sounds like a huge waste of time.
Well, I get your feeling. I often feel exactly the same way. As a political scientist who's accustomed to thinking about the tools, you know, the connections between popular opinion and government. I mean, more than 90% of Americans want some form of gun control, but the Congress won't pass it, you know, because of the NRA and other kinds of cultural issues. You know, it often can take 10, 20, 30 years for dominant public opinion to be actually acted on by the U.S. government. And this probably goes for other governments as well, because, you know, elected officials, there's a lag between public opinion, popular opinion, and elected officials, unless there's a big, almost revolutionary outburst by public opinion. And we're not likely to see that. We saw a part of it with the Palestinian demonstrations and so on, and they were basically crushed. You know, so that's kind of where we're at in the United States. So I'm not suggesting in any way whatsoever that the IPC people, you know, that you, me least of all, distract your attention.
So why are you bringing this up? Why are you
Because
bringing?
because the kind of the back end of my focus, you know, it's like if I'm constructing, let's say, a tube, you know, that's meant to transmit something from the beginning of the tube to the end of the tube. At the other end of the tube where it comes out, I want it to conform to the next stage, you know, that is a reasonable, you know, and a good solution. It's like there's no point in constructing a plan that doesn't go to the next level. It's got to at least be flexible for the next level.
Well, so I ask you, what's wrong with the IPC? You're talking about American politics. I'm asking you, can you tell us what's wrong with the IPC? What's wrong with the vision of the IPC to be created as a federal government in Israel, Palestine? Can you put that together and tell us what's wrong with it without telling us about American politics?
Oh, I'm not telling you anything that's wrong. I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with the IPC idea at all. You know, I asked a, you know, kind of a different question, whether it might be possible to comport my focus with, you know, like getting the American government, providing a way to compel the American government to work in benefit of something that eventually creates the IPC.
May I just yeah, I agree
only-
with Daniel. Yeah, okay.
I'm sorry, Shlomo, let's go by order because Heather had her hand up first, but it should be real quick. So go ahead, Heather.
Thank you. Well, on the subject, how about we consider some legislation, IPC legislation, to keep foreign genocide causing arms out? So work on it from the inside end.
We have legislation on that subject. We haven't shown it to you today, but we have that legislation all the time, telling all the superpowers of the world to reduce the amount of weapons sent to the area.
Great. Maybe it should be revived or re-emphasized somehow.
Sure.
Perhaps that would address what Daniel's getting at.
Okay, go ahead, Shlomo. Did you have a?
Yeah, very quickly. Just there is nothing wrong about going with the IPC and parallel to it, try to influence the American government, which I'm doing every day. So yeah, so it's not doesn't contradict. On the contrary, you're right. There is something in common. Once we convince them somehow miraculously to stop this genocide, because it's up to them, then it will make it easier for the IPC. That's all I want to say.
Okay, Mr. Modi. Mr. Modi, you need to unmute.
Fumiko Mori.
You're muted, sir. You're muted. Unmute.
You need to unmute, Fumiko.
Can
There
you
we
hear
go.
me now?
Yeah, now we hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. So first of all, thank you very much for, and Josephson's strenuous effort to try to really bring about the peace or find kind of the solution for this complicated issue. But also so you also mentioned you also got involved in a kind of let's say campaign activities, right? So that's why you mentioned that New York Times article.
No, we have an ad. It's going to be on December 22nd. It's not it's not an article. An ad in the New York Times on on Sunday, January 22nd. December 22nd, asking people to join our simulations, with the hope that we will get a write-up about it in the New York Times or other papers, and we're planning to have that ad running continuously next year.
So that's the main purpose, is to create an awareness of the reality of the atrocity, killing, right? And so things
No. The main focus is to tell people that there is a a possibility of resolving the Israeli-Palestinian conflict by way of an IPC and to ask people to join the IPC simulation, the same thing that you've been doing now for many, many months before.
The reason I'm asking about the proportional, promotion activity is, okay, just today I happened to watch, okay, We Are the World, okay, and because, Christmas is coming, and so that's why I just watch it, and then so I think it, like, a lot of singers, famous, celebrity, singers, got together and then so sing a song and to make people aware of what's really going on, and so it's easy to get more attention to more people. I think internationally we need international pressure, really, so there's no kind of communication, of course, between Palestinians and Israelis. Okay, and so, but first of all, we have to get to know each other, and so that's the easiest way, and to kind of, it's not academical level, but just that for the sake of the future, generation. I think, and just We Are the World. I think when I was a kid, and so just I was so moved by that song. I think that the kids are the same right now too, and so that's also I would like I would appreciate it if you take into consideration of that kind of activity, and just
So I'm not clear. What is it that you want us to take into consideration?
just get the kind of concert or something like that. Okay, bring in those famous, okay, popular singers and the music in a concert, and to just bring more and more children, also families, and then things like that, and then so they just I hope they get to know. Okay, and then some more sport activities too. For example, I'm a great fan of baseball, and so just Israel has a baseball team, professional baseball team, and then so just from the children, okay, and from the kid age, and so they just start playing with each other, like Palestinian kids and Israeli kids, and so that's the way I think in the sport that plays a very important role. I'm just fed up with the politician, but sport and culture, those elements, it's very, very important. I would appreciate it if you put a lot of work, still a lot of work.
I think you're assuming that we have a lot more power than we actually do. But yeah. All right, let's go. Sean,
Thank you. Anyway,
Joseph, just one question. Lately I've been going on social media and I'm seeing all these Israeli influencers, spewing all this stuff to make everybody believe that Israel's on the right and that they want to have war with Hamas, But my point is like they're doing it 24/7, day and night. Like these Israeli influencers like pushing this narrative to control people's opinion, to tell them, oh, that we need to go on with this war, we need to keep going on, and there's no peace to it, and but they're not like we have a narrative. We want to push this IPC narrative, but we're not being shown. It's like there's far more influencers of Israeli pushing propaganda than us trying to have another path to this problem with Israel Palestine. I understand we need more people, but unfortunately, all these I'm seeing a lot more Israeli influencers on the social media spewing all this stuff constantly, like nothing to about it. And then people will think that, oh, this has to keep going on and on because what they've been told of with Israel's influencers. Yeah.
So you're right. I mean, the Israelis have their agenda, they have their propaganda, but there is nothing really to logically stop them. In other words, they're saying, well, the Palestinians don't want peace. The Palestinians are our enemy, and therefore we need to fight them. We are showing that actually peace is possible, and our challenge is to actually, we have the formula for peace. Our challenge is to make that the public aware of it. If we are able to make the public aware of it, then we will be able to get this thing, the election going. It doesn't take much, in my opinion. About $100 million, we will be able to get this election going, and we'll be able to change the narrative. We need to change the narrative.
They have much more leverage than us. They have much more finance than us because they can do all these things.
But they're not fighting us. They're not even aware of us. I wish they were fighting us. I wish they were saying that we do not make sense. I wish they were, because if they did, if they fought us, they would give us what we want, is awareness. You know, they are fighting. They're fighting a ghost. They're fighting ideas that are, a lot of them are not real.
I'm trying to interact with them. I'm trying to show them other ways, but what they do, they ignore me or they block me on social media because they don't want to hear me.
Yeah, yeah. Sean, they lost the hasbara, the propaganda war. They are actually losing it. It's too much that Israel is doing. The whole world is seeing. They cannot can talk and talk, but the whole world is against Israel now. I mean, people, not governments necessarily.
I know that.
Yeah, so I would, I don't know, I would disregard them.
Okay, I understand, but you know what? Even with the failing propaganda, they still constantly keep going at it. Like it's like nonstop with them. I don't know what to say. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't read them, so I that's what that's what I do. But there is a lot of stuff on the web against, you know, on the side of the Palestinians, and I think much more. But they try very hard. Yeah, they work very hard to.
And if anybody who has a different opinion than them, they will try to get someone to shut them down, or somebody, or pull, or to suspend his account because he's having a different approach to the Israel-Palestinian conflict. Like if they can't, they'll try to dispute with you. If they can't, then they'll try to shut you down. They try to get some authority to take you down. Yeah.
Sean, let me tell you something. The hardline Israelis, the right-wing Israelis, when I speak with them, they are extremely afraid of the IPC, extremely afraid of it. So I'm not saying that the hardline in general is aware of it, but those that I meet do not like the IPC. And you know why? Because they know that the moment it becomes, the public is aware of it, then the Israeli population and the Palestinian populations in general will support it. They know that. And they are afraid of it. They want this violence to go on forever. They're addicted to this war. They're addicted to this violence. They do not want anything rational at all. So again, I'm going back to our problem is not we only have one problem, and that is creating awareness.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you want to go to the next one, Lawrence?
Yeah, Larry.
Go ahead, Lawrence, unmute. Unmute, Lawrence.
Yeah,
There you go.
I just want to throw something out that is so crystal clear right now, given what has just happened in Syria, the latest manifestation of it, that you're up against that I don't hear a lot of conversation about. No matter what we think of Israel, how deeply evil it is, how conniving its current government is, no matter what we think of Israel, the empire is behind it.
Yeah.
The empire was behind what just happened in Syria. This is the clean break strategy, if you will, that we've been painfully, arduously implementing for about 20 years. Syria is the latest example of that. Syria will most likely be another Libya, but we don't care because what we want is chaos throughout Southwest Asia because we see that chaos hurting China, whose predominant supply of oil now comes through the Persian Gulf, and ultimately hurting Russia. So even if we corrected all the situations that this IPC plan or idea purports to want to correct, and I agree with them 100% in my own mind, the empire is still going to be a major impediment because it isn't Ben Gvir and Smotrich and the rest of the evil people in Jerusalem right now who are the mask behind the curtain, if you will. It's America.
100%, as usual, Larry. I listened to you yesterday. The perfect speech.
Absolutely. That'll be interesting. Because it's interesting how I know there's other people in line, but I want to ask because Lawrence Wilkerson is definitely an authority on this. It's been interesting how Israel is sort of kind of double playing the situation in Syria. Like, no, we're not involved. No, we don't care what's going on. We just need to protect our border. Yet at the same time, the Syrian situation is so complex because of all the proxy armies and sides, and we don't know that. So it'd be interesting it's interesting to hear that perspective because we're seeing that people are celebrating the takeover from these rebels, but at the same time criticizing us who have suspicion of these rebels because a lot of them have history that are groups that have the U.S. and Israel has assisted, and now they're calling us pro-Assad if we speak out against them. But it's like we can't be pro. It's like it's either you're pro-Assad or pro-rebels. There's no in between to be suspicious of both or to be not disliking of both sides.
Which was exactly what pertained in Libya. You were either pro-Gaddafi or you were against Gaddafi. And we saw we conquered. And look at the basket case that Libya is today. Yeah. Syria will be the same thing. But there's a very big difference here. And Netanyahu has just started making that difference. He's moved into Syria, ostensibly to create a buffer zone for the Golan. But watch what happens next, because we made a deal with the monster in Ankara too, Erdogan. Both are going to start taking territory in Syria to seal their own deals. And this is going to be exactly what the empire wants. And Israel is just an impediment, or not an impediment, but just an expediter of part of the facets of this overall strategy to dominate Southwest Asia in order to hurt China and Russia.
Interesting. And I should mention that when Netanyahu was giving his speech at the Golan Heights, I mean, his face was almost like the kid who stole the cake. Like, although he's trying to downplay it was in his face how happy he was with the situation. But that's just maybe my bias.
It probably means a significant, if not an existential defeat for Hezbollah too, because the line of communications, line of support has been broken. And unless Russia or China or someone else can establish a new LOC for Hezbollah, they're done.
Yes. Thank you, Lawrence. Always great to hear your perspective.
Truly. Dismal perspective, I admit.
Well, yeah. Walter?
Yes. Joseph, have you heard of Daniel Boyarin?
No.
From UCA Berkeley. He has the no state solution. And then I was told about Peter Beinart,
Beinart,
Beinart.
Peter Beinart,
Yeah.
Princeton
A-R-T.
University, yes.
And what about Shaul Magid from Dartmouth College? He wrote The Necessity of Exile. So those are things I just learned about yesterday.
Well, Peter Beinart was in our simulation.
Okay.
He favors two state, one people. He's a Zionist, and he does not want a federal government. He does not support the federal government.
He's making a book, Being Jewish After the Destruction of Gaza. He's preparing that.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know if he changed his views, but he never supported the federal government.
He may in the future. The things are moving quickly now.
The way I heard these things, I was listening to Sigve Honstad at Loma Linda University, and he was very passionate when it comes to the Gaza situation, and he's a research professor of religion at Loma Linda University. So I appreciated his support for peace over there.
Now you said Shaul. What's his last name? Shaul at Dartmouth.
Shaul Magid. Shaul Magid, I think.
M-A-G-I-D.
Yeah.
Hey, he's at Dartmouth.
Dartmouth College.
Okay. I'll check him out.
Yeah,
right.
Gaza is shaking the whole world now.
Thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead. Okay, if that's it, we'll move to Samir.
Hi, everybody. I am optimistic. I see free Syria. I disagree with Lawrence and with Nasir on that. The Syrian people are free. The Syrian revolution won. After 54 years of dictatorship, of a brutal dictatorship, finally the Syrian people won. They were fighting since 2011. The Syrian revolution started. And who prevented that victory is Imperial Russia and Imperial Iran. Those are the enemies of freedom of the Syrian people. And today, Iran is out of Syria, Russia out of Syria. Syria is free. And this is the first time for the Syrian people to say that we are free in Syria, and now Palestine will be free. That what will be the next. And what you call, Syria rebels and all of that Russian propaganda that does not tell the truth about the Syrian revolution. This is the Syrian people everywhere, not bunch of rebels and calling them terrorists and all of that. No, the Syrian people, all of them, in every city, in every village, they are celebrating the victory. And what comes next is the UN Security Council Resolution 2254, which was issued in 2015, and it never been implemented because of the criminal dictator Assad. With the support of Russia and Iran, they prevented that. And now this UN resolution will be implemented. And that is not going to be like Libya, as Lawrence said. No, never. It's not going to be like any other country. Syria will be the leader in the Middle East, the leader in the Arab world. And that what you call, the Palestinian resistance should be stronger now. And the Palestinian people should be stronger to demand their freedom and to live equally in one secular democratic state of Palestine, Israel. That's what it should be next. Not to say this is pessimistic and this is going to be like Libya, like Iran. We got rid of Iran. It never be like Iran. Syria never be like any other country. Syria is going to be free, democratic Syria for the first time.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's interesting because the party that took this leading this rebellion is they are not democratic nor are they secular, but I guess that's besides the point. Anyways,
Well, that's not their
but
business,
but let me go on. Heather, go ahead.
Who's in control? Who's in control in Syria are the Syrian people, not those rebels.
Okay, we'll see.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Heather.
We'll see.
Heather,
Not
and
to
then
go into the
Shlomo.
weeds. Thank you. Samir, but what about the American backing going on in Syria? I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that. You're on mute, Samir.
Are you saying that the American is supporting the
Yeah.
Syrian rebels?
America and Israel, yes. And that's a question. So how Samir, you see freedom for the Palestinians if Israel is is their friend now? I wonder what Larry thinks about it.
I think Samir is muted.
Certainly answering the question, but we just can't hear it.
Okay, Samir, no one's hearing you, so your mic is not working or you're muted. It doesn't look like you're muted, but it's maybe you're refresh, maybe.
And I'll just give one short comment.
Sure. Go ahead.
I'd like to meet the gentleman in Tripoli in a year. We'll have lunch if we're both still alive, and we'll compare notes.
Or even better, meet him in Damascus.
Or Damascus, if we can meet there.
This is again goes to the thing. It's like, is it to be pro-Bashar or to be skeptical of the rebels? I don't understand this. It's like it's either black or white. Is there a gray area here, please? Can I be worried about both?
Yes, I think you can. I think the hand of Erdogan is heavy in this.
My microphone is not muted, is on. So can you hear me?
Yes, now we hear you.
Yes.
Yes. Well, I talked all night to my families in Syria and all over the world. They are very happy. I talked to all my friends in Syria, very happy with the victory. Every Syrian is happy. Do you know how many prisoners of conscience in Syria since 2011? Over 150,000. And yesterday and today are free. The prisons of Syria are free. People, spent 30 years and 40 years in the prisons. And thousands of them died already under torture.
Samir,
and
did you hear my question?
Youngest brother. I have a youngest brother who died under torture in Syria, in Syrian prison in 2015.
Samir, did you hear my question? I was
many
curious.
Relatives, hundreds of relatives and people who died, for freedom. Syrian people are
Samir,
happy.
Samir, there's a question for you. Go ahead, Heather.
Thank you, Samir. I was wondering if you had heard my question, and I hear where you're coming from, and I'm happy for you. But my question was, what are your thoughts about the American backing in Syria, specifically?
Well, the Americans are there to counter the Russians and Iranians.
And how's that going to go with American backing, considering what we know about Americans?
Well, I mean, the Americans, after, I mean, Syria is free, they have no business there. They will leave.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
I will
there is
expect
no
that
more,
from
no
my
more
Congress.
occupation, no more occupations. I mean, the occupations is over. I mean, the dictatorship is over. The reason, I mean, for the US was involved in Syria to stop the Russian and Iranian domination and the dictatorship. That was the reason. Now, I mean, there is no reason for them. And there is also no reason to support those, what they call the Kurdish forces anymore. I mean, those, the Kurds are part of Syria and they should be part of the new democratic Syria.
And
The
so
mayor-
what would you,
Is the new government of Syria, such as it might be constituted, is it going to continue shipping the oil it's been shipping, that America's been guarding the shipment of, from Syria to Israel?
There is no oil shipping. I mean, what are you talking about?
Oh, yes, there is. The oil
Well, there
shipped
is-
from Syria to Israel.
No, no. The oil in Syria, it's in the hands of the the Kurdish area and then in the northeast.
No.
And
Guarded by American troops. And it's
yeah,
been shipped to Israel.
No, it was not shipped.
Samir, wake
It was-
up, wake up. No, Samir,
You're not
no.
answering my question. Is this new government, however it's constituted, going to continue that?
No, that's not true. It was not shipped to Israel. It was shipped actually to the regime, to Assad regime, and it was shipped to Iraq.
The American, even Trump himself was proudly saying that we take the oil from Syria, basically stealing it. And what Larry is saying that at least part of it went to Israel directly. And Samir, you just are not updated on that, so find out.
No, I mean, I know there is no, I know for the last, say 5 years, this, the Assad, what they call the Syrian Democratic Forces, with the American forces in northeast Syria, that's what they were doing. They were selling oil to the Syrian regime, to Assad. And the other part goes to Iraq.
Well, find out.
So in any way, I mean, the Syrian people now will be in control of that. The new democratic government will determine where the oil supposed to go to the Syrians.
Yeah.
Which is what Assad said at the UN when he protested the United States presence there, protecting it going to Israel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it will be interesting to see where this goes.
I do have an article from the BBC that talks about that, Samir, if you're interested in looking at it.
I'm going to check it out because I have a cousin in Syria. I'm going to ask him what he's going to say about it.
I mean, of course, they're going to say that they're happy to see the dictator gone. But again, this is not an issue versus the dictator versus, I mean, you know, like you said, these people. And here's the article that Lawrence, well, the topic that Lawrence, and this is from the BBC, so you might want to see.
I'm happy to see Assad gone too, as I would be
Yeah,
happy
me
to see
too.
any brutal dictator like him gone. But I just know the track record of a dictator being gone in this manner is not very good afterwards.
Yes.
All right, Nasir, I think we have to.
Yes. Go ahead if you want to closing remarks, or go ahead. I think everybody.
I made them a closing remark.
Oh, okay. Okay, I want to thank you all for your participation, and I think this went very well considering that the person who was our guest bailed out on us. I thought some of the bills, that second bill was actually very interesting, Joseph. That was a new one that we haven't seen.
Yeah.
I thought it really gave us a good exercise, and I think the participation from everyone today, and hopefully we'll see you guys all next time with our guests that we have lined up.
All right.
Take care.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you.